The moment he unsheathed it, the old man's eyes lit up like high beams. I was wondering where you'd run off to, and here you are bringing back a magnificent blade like this. Careful now, staring at it that hard might burn a hole right through the steel. Yongun teased, prompting the old man to tone it down a notch. Only then did the craftsman realize he was getting a little carried away. He quickly averted his gaze and asked, "So what can I do for you? This sword certainly doesn't look like it needs any sharpening." Across from him, Yongun took out the stone he'd gotten from defeating the Monkey King. "First, could you take a look at this? The warrior constellation with the golden crown spins its crown out of habit. This material is quite useful. This starstone is unique." Go Jiangqiu nodded. "Just as I thought he recognized it right away," Yongun mused. "It's the jade stone I got from the Rocky Mountain boss monster. Among all the stones available at this stage, it's one of the best." With that in mind, Yongun stated his request. "I was hoping you could make some armor for me with this." "Sure thing, I already make weapons for the whole camp, don't I?" Go Jiangqiu happily agreed. "Can you finish it before the next attack wave?" Yongun asked, his expression serious. The old man checked the time. "There are about 10 hours until the next one." He then added, "Based on the remaining time, that should be more than enough." "Is there a particular reason for the rush?" "There is. I plan to go all out in the next wave," Yongun replied. Time passed quickly, and by the next morning, Yongun and Hansel were sparring. "You've improved, haven't you? You've changed too. You've always been a beast. But now you're a straight-up monster," Hansel complained. "Is that a compliment? You've picked up quite a bit of Tai Chi even without being taught." "When it comes to learning things physically, I'm a natural," Hanchiel said confidently. In response, Yongshan pointed out one of Hanchiel's problems. "But that way you're not really playing to your strengths." "My strengths?" Hanchiel asked again, and Yongshan nodded. "That's right, your strengths." With that, he leaped forward. At the same time, he opened the Treasury of Greed to learn a skill called the Jingu Nyan Family Fist. It's a martial art from the Jingu Nagan family, one of the 5 great families specializing in one-on-one close combat and known for its signature necromancy techniques. Across from him, when Hanchiel saw Yongshan's fist coming, he didn't hesitate to throw his own punch to meet it head-on. Their fists were so powerful that when they collided, a shockwave rippled out around them. However, in the end, Yongshan was still a cut above the rest. This was because the internal energy and techniques from the Jingu Nagan family fist had enhanced his own Jiangshi fist. The blow sent the big guy staggering backward, causing the girl Josea, who was watching from the side, to cover her mouth in shock. "That last punch," Hanchiel mumbled, looking at his trembling hand. Across from him, Yongshan explained, "Power fist. This is how you can unleash your full potential. Once your form is perfect, I'll teach you more about spiritual techniques. For now, Park Jongpil." Hearing his name, Park Jongpil shot forward like an arrow. "Boss, I'm here. You're free right now, aren't you?" Yongshan asked. "Yes, I've cleared my schedule, so I'm at your beck and call." "Good. Then you'll be Hanchiel's sparring partner for a while," Yongshan said with a smile, causing the blonde young man to break out in a cold sweat. "What's her haha, boss? Actually, I just remembered. I have something really important to do," Park Jongpil said, slowly backing away. Unfortunately for him, there was no way Yongshan would buy an excuse he just came up with on the spot. "Use him as you please." "I won't hold back," Hanchiel declared, then grabbed Park Jongpil by the collar and dragged him aside. "I'm counting on you, Park Jongja." "He doesn't even remember my name." "No, boss, you." Park Jongpil screamed desperately, which made his deceiver constellation roar with laughter, completely ignoring his cries. Next, Yongshan turned to spar with Josea, whose style was completely different from Hanchiel's. She knew how to play to her strengths, and her form was nearly flawless. Even so, Yongshan suddenly sheathed his sword and said, "Your technique is good, but you're lacking power. It's fine for fighting mobs of weaker monsters, but against a truly strong opponent, speed and technique alone aren't enough." Above, Josea's constellation seemed to agree with this assessment. The constellation wearing a crown nodded, and in truth she was already well aware of this fact, without needing to be told. "Just the red-skinned monsters alone were a tough fight," she said, biting her lip in frustration. Across from her, Yongshan added, "Every time I leave the camp, I fight boss monsters. They're much stronger than the common monsters that appear in the waves." "So that's how you've gotten so strong." "It's because of the boss monsters," Josea said with a look of understanding. Returning to Yongshan's perspective, "I predict that a boss monster might appear in the next wave." It wasn't just a prediction, it was a fact, but he couldn't say that out loud. "The rest is up to her," Yongshan thought to himself, giving her an encouraging nod. "From now on, I'm counting on you to lead the Che district well." "Yes," she replied cheerfully. Time passed quickly. Just then, a system notification appeared, reminding everyone that the next battle was imminent. Adaptation. 5 minutes until the 10th monster wave. At that same moment, the old craftsman Go Jang Se finished the armor using the stone Yang Shan had given him. What do you think, is it to your liking? He asked as Yang Shan put on the armor and moved around to test the fit. This is the Crimson Wolf armor. Classification C- rank armor. Description: A set of armor made from the hide of a crimson wolf and forged with jadeite from a stone monkey. Effect: increases attack power by 10%. Induces fear in monsters weaker than the wearer. Significantly increases defense and durability. After reading the description, Yang Shan nodded in satisfaction. Yes, this is far beyond my expectations, he said, marveling to himself. I can't believe it's only a C- rank, but considering it was made with Barris's technique, I guess it makes sense. Across from him, the old craftsman Go Jang Se and his constellation grinned widely at Yang Shan's satisfied expression. His constellation, the warrior with the golden crown, declared that his technique was incorporated into the armor, guaranteeing its performance. Back with Go Jang, as the battle fast approached, Zhang Xiao offered him some advice. Sir, you should take shelter inside the forge. Hearing him say that, Go Jang immediately protested. Now I have to witness my masterpiece shine, you know. Besides, you'll stop them easily enough. Right, Go Jang said, giving the protagonist a thumbs up, with a completely confident expression, certain that he would be protected. In response to this confidence, Yang Xiao just smiled lightly. In that case, please stay behind everyone where it's safe. Then another system notification appeared. The final wave, the 10th wave, has begun. Defeat the final wave and prove your worth. They're here, someone shouted as the final wave of monster attacks began. This wave was far more numerous, with everything from red wolves to the red apes that slowly started to appear. Seeing this, the people around him looked relieved. These are the same monsters we've fought before. What kind of final boss is this? But there are a lot of them. Turning to Joseoa and seeing the swarm of monsters appear, she stepped forward to command everyone. These are monsters we've defeated before. Stay calm and form a perimeter around the fence, she said calmly, before a terrifying howl erupted from the opposite side, drawing everyone's attention. Their faces paled as they saw its massive scarred body. Before their very eyes, a terrifyingly large wolf had appeared, Red Fang Canonin. A notification specifically for this wolf rang out, confirming what everyone was thinking. It was the boss monster. That's not all over there too, Kang Haneo shouted as a giant wild boar also emerged. It was Red Tuskback. Finally, Red Claw Yasak appeared in the form of a fully armored monkey. So in total, there were 3 major bosses in the 10th attack wave. Their current situation was dire. They were surrounded in the middle by 3 hordes of monsters, red wolves, red boars, and red apes. Looking at the enemy formation and their own predicament, despair began to creep into everyone's eyes. We're doomed. This is impossible. Commander, what do we do now? Everyone said, turning in unison to look at Joseoa, awaiting her command. The swordswoman broke into a cold sweat as she herself had no idea how to handle this situation. She stammered, her whole body trembling uncontrollably. However, before she had a chance to think or ask anything, our protagonist had already gripped his weapon and shot forward like an arrow. Thanks to the martial art, extreme heart-shattering art, the technique's power was enhanced by the 3rd form of the Blood Wolf's internal art, making his Blood Wolf sword art advancing strike even stronger. At this moment, Zhang Xiao's first target was the wolf leader Canonin, because only by overwhelming and defeating it as quickly as possible could he break their formation and boost everyone's morale. And so with incredible speed, Yang Xiao unleashed a slash onto the wolf leader's body, causing it to shriek in terror. Not only that, but due to the difference in power, the effect of the armor Zhang Xiao was wearing also activated. Nearby red wolves are terrified by the effect of the red wolf armor. The gray wolf's cloak increases the enemy's fear. Just like that, the pack of wolves hastily retreated. Seeing this, Zhang Xiao turned and yelled to Joseoa, and Haneo, Joseoa, Kang Haneo snap out of it. Hearing Yang Xiao's shout, the 2 of them were jolted from their fear. Next, Yang Xiao started to use his magic. Thanks to his Black Tower mastery, the power of chain lightning was enhanced. Just then, a terrifying column of lightning shot from Yang Xiao's palm, electrocuting the wolf. Canonin convulsed violently, its tongue lolling all the way out. It was a pathetic sight to behold, and even Yang Xiao himself found it a bit strange. Has this thing always been this weak? It used to be terrifying, slaughtering people left and right. It can't be just because I've gotten stronger. Yang Xiao thought to himself. Meanwhile, from taking too much damage, the boss had entered an enraged state. Red Fang Canonin has entered a berserk state. The moment the notification ended, the wolf's entire body turned a deep red as if it could burst into flames at any moment. Then its eyes locked onto Yong-seol, the one who had pushed it into this state, and it charged forward. Across from it, Yong-seol watched it coming. He gripped his sword tightly. Before his regression, this attack had nearly wiped out the entire camp in a single blow. But now I know all its skills and its attack patterns. I'll use its own momentum against it and push it back. With that, Yong-seol thrust his sword straight into the wolf's snout, but its fangs clamped down, stopping the blade. Seeing this, Yong-seol poured strength into both hands and forcefully yanked the sword from the wolf leader's mouth. Then, seizing the moment while the monster was unable to react, he leaped into the air. Using the force of his descent, he plunged his sword deep into Kananen's brain, pinning it. It barely let out a scream before it kicked the bucket. You have defeated the named monster, Red Fang Kanan. Your personal contribution points have increased by 4,000. For defeating a named monster alone, you are awarded an additional 4,000 points. You have obtained Kanan's Fang. With the wolf dead, Jiangsu quickly used his gluttony skill to increase his stats. You have devoured Red Fang Kanan by absorbing its essence. Your strength has increased by 5, and your agility has increased by 10. The red wolves' fear has intensified. The remaining red wolves saw that Jiangsu had just finished off their leader. Utterly terrified, they tucked their tails between their legs and slowly backed away, earning Jiangsu's silent contempt. With their leader dead, they've fallen into complete disarray, he thought. He turned and said to a man beside him, "Clean up the rest for me, will you?" "Yes, sir," the man replied hastily. Jiangsu then quickly ran to support the other areas. With the red wolves in this state, the others could easily handle them. Now let's see about the other monsters. In another area, that guy Hancheol was using his raw strength to block the boar leader Park. It looked like they were temporarily at a stalemate, going head-to-head with that giant, using pure strength alone. That's Kang Hancheol for you, Jiangsu thought to himself. Back in the fight, Park activated its earthquake skill. It slammed its two front hooves into the ground, creating a shockwave that rushed toward Hancheol. Seeing this, Hancheol also poured power into his fist and punched the ground, creating a similar tremor to counter the wild boar's attack. He's using an earthquake to nullify an earthquake. He's adapted well to his constellation's power. Jiangsu thought with a nod, then walked over to him. Do you remember the attack forms of the Nangyok Fist? I can manage the first form, Hancheol replied. Good, then follow my lead. As he spoke, Jiangsu sheathed his sword and then accelerated, running past the boar leader, which seemed a bit surprised. But the surprises weren't over. Jiangsu began to channel his internal energy into his fist. Thanks to his internal energy, the first form of the Nangyok Fist, the Jiangxi Fist, was enhanced. Once charged, Jiangsu unleashed the punch straight into the boar's tusk. It instantly shattered the tusk into pieces. On the other side, Hancheol was already in position, ready to follow up. Even his constellation was lending a hand. The constellation Old Man Riding a Crocodile Fish has actively lent its earthquake ability to its contractor. Player Kang Hancheol's Jiangxi Fist has been enhanced. The moment the notification faded, Hancheol's eyes rolled back as he slammed his fist straight into the boar leader's face. The impact sent its entire body flying to one side, and that punch officially sent the boar to meet its maker. You have defeated the named monster Red Tusk Park. Over here, Hancheol was still in a daze, unable to believe he could throw such a powerful punch. So this is what overwhelming power feels like, he muttered. Jiangsu nodded in approval. Yeah, once you get used to it, you'll be able to unleash that kind of power without the constellation's help anymore. Hearing this, Hancheol grew quiet, staring thoughtfully at his fist. Paying him no mind, Jiangsu turned and used gluttony to raise his stats. You have absorbed Red Tusk Park by absorbing its essence. Your strength has increased by 5, and your stamina has increased by 10. The constellation, the Starving Prince, savors the tender meat with ecstatic pleasure. After finishing, Jiangsu turned to Hancheol. Hancheol, you can handle the rest of the boars, right? Of course, Hancheol nodded. Then I'll leave them to you. The trial isn't over yet, Jiangsu thought to himself, as he hurried off to deal with the final boss. At that moment, Yu Seihua was struggling to fend off the monkeys surrounding her from all sides. Everyone, don't be afraid. If you're injured, and fall back behind the barrier now, she shouted, directing the others, while desperately slashing at the monsters around her. Yu Seihua, she's doing better than I thought. It must be her talent combined with the constellation's power, Jiangsu thought with a smile, just before a familiar voice reached his ears. If you're so good, then come and get me, bet you can't. Hearing that voice, Jiangsu paused for a beat, wondering who it could possibly be. As he thought this, he looked over, and sure enough, the voice belonged to his friend Park Jong-pil, who was carrying a bunch of bananas while leading a whole pack of monsters on a merry chase. Can't catch me? So mad you could spit, huh? Park Jongpil laughed tauntingly, making the apes even more furious. It was just a pity they ran too slowly, so there was no way they could catch up. Seeing this spectacle had Tinu rolling on the floor laughing. Jongsu's mind felt hazy as if he were in a daze. Who on earth was that guy, and how was he so ridiculously useful? He wasn't just kiting them either. He had even managed to snatch equipment from those apes along the way. Looks like he's picked up a stealing skill. That's the signature ability of the 6th-ranked Demon King, Belelford. Hey, as long as it benefits our team, I'm not complaining. Back over with Jusoa, the ape leader Yasak swung its sword and completely shattered the barrier the group had put up. Jusoa saw this and quickly yelled to her team, "The barrier's down, everyone fall back. I'll take care of this named monster." Just then, Jongsoon rushed to her side, catching her a little off guard. "Jongsoon, what are you doing here? What about the other fronts?" Hearing her question, Jongsoon calmly replied, "They're pretty much all wrapped up. You don't need to worry, let's just finish this last one off." "Okay, thank you." Jusoa nodded in reply. Meanwhile, Yasak roared and charged at the two of them, completely unaware that this was the worst possible move it could make. Seeing the ape charge, Jongsoon and Jusoa also rushed forward to meet it head-on. Jusoa took the lead. Jusoa unleashed a flurry of slashes with her dual swords, forcing the ape leader to a dead stop as it raised its shield to block. For a dual wielder, a monster with a shield is a real pain, and this one's pretty smart too. "It's got some pretty good shield work," Jongsoon silently noted. He watched Jusoa's movements, thinking, her swordsmanship is solid at its core. But her footwork is the problem. Her feet just can't keep up with her hands. With that thought, he stepped forward, deciding to give her a little on-the-job training. "Jusoa, from now on, just copy my footwork." "Huh, you mean right now?" she asked, completely shocked. "The fastest way to learn is in a real fight," Jongsoon replied, as if teaching her in the middle of a boss battle was the most normal thing in the world. He then opened his greedy treasury and activated a skill called Camille's Dual Sword Style. The dual sword style of the mercenary king, Camille, was considered one of the 5 legendary techniques. Her footwork in particular was said to be like a leaf in a storm. Nobody could ever keep up with it. From Jusoa's perspective, all she could see was Jongsoon weaving left and right, a constant blur of motion. It made him completely unpredictable. "What in the world is this footwork?" she couldn't help but exclaim. Meanwhile, Jongsoon had already closed the distance to the ape leader and drew the dagger from his hip. Then he leaped into a mid-air spin and unleashed 2 precise slashes at the ape leader Yasak's shoulder. Behind him, Jusoa took a deep breath and started to move perfectly, mimicking Jongsoon's footwork. Just like that. The two of them, one in front and one behind, launched a pincer attack, hitting the ape so hard that all it could do was scream in pain. Even with its shield, it couldn't block their coordinated assault. Seeing Jusoa keeping pace perfectly, Jongsoon nodded in approval. "Good, keep it up faster." Hearing his command, Jusoa gritted her teeth and pushed her speed to the next level. Soon the two of them became a literal whirlwind of attacks, completely enveloping the ape leader, Yasak. Inside this storm, countless slashes rained down from every direction, carving wounds all over its body and making the ape shriek, like it just saw its credit card bill. Finally, the poor beast didn't even have the strength to hold its shield up anymore, which was the opening Jongsoon and Jusoa were waiting for. With a single synchronized attack, the two of them cleanly took the red ape's head right off its shoulders. "System, you have defeated the named monster Red Claw Yasak. Your personal contribution has increased by 4,000 points. System, you have obtained Yasak's sword." Around them, the other apes saw what happened to their leader. Realizing their boss had officially kicked the bucket, they all gave each other a look and promptly scattered. And just like that, the 10th attack wave was over, with a decisive victory for Jongsoon's party. "It's finally over," Jusoa said with a sigh of relief, looking at the notification screen. "First trial chapter adaptation. You have successfully cleared 10 waves. Congratulations on your completion. The first chapter of the tutorial trial has ended. We're finally free from those darn waves. Great job, everyone." The twins were so overjoyed, they actually started to cry. Only Jongsoon, with his knowledge of the future, knew it was way too early to celebrate. And sure enough, just as he predicted, another notification popped up for everyone. "Jongsoon, this is..." Jusoa said, stunned. Just as he'd expected, a new notification had arrived. Tutorial trial second. Your chapter movement. You must reach the objective by crossing the plains. Time remaining 167 hours and 59 minutes. "Time to get a move on," Jongsoon said calmly. The announcement left everyone feeling a little bewildered. "But we were just starting to get used to this place," someone muttered. The theme of the first chapter was adaptation, and just as planned, everyone had managed to adapt and survive. After fighting so hard to survive in this wilderness, leaving the one environment they'd finally gotten used to was understandably unsettling. Jong-soon calmly observed the group's rising panic. Seeing this, Jusoa quickly stepped forward. "Calm down, everyone." But unlike the others who were freaking out, the twins actually found it a little exciting. "I wonder where we're going next," one of them asked. "Hopefully we'll come across a village. If we do, the very first thing I'm doing is taking a bath," Handon said with a laugh, while his sister Hanaji stroked her chin and asked, "But what if we run into monsters on the way?" "So what if we do?" "We've handled everything that's come our way so far, right, everyone?" They cheered in unison, turning to the others with sparkling eyes. His words immediately lifted everyone's spirits. "That's right. We even survived that last ordeal. What could possibly be tougher than that?" Thanks to the twins, the group's morale had improved. A bit, Young-jun thought, just as the twins turned and gestured toward him, making him sigh internally. So it was them. They've helped us out once again. Time passed by in a flash. The aftermath of the 10th wave was cleaned up in no time. Everyone had fallen into a rhythm, moving in perfect sync as they cooked the meat from the monsters they'd hunted. The hides were given to Mr. Go Jang-seol. Given the number of monsters hunted, there was a mountain of work to do. With everyone pitching in, everything got done quickly. Before his regression, not many people had survived this long. The atmosphere back then was much worse. That's why I left the camp without a plan. Thinking this, Yong-jun also noticed the Han twins. Aji and Handon were whispering to each other about something in the distance. Those two, they act all brave in front of others, but they're hesitant to leave the barrier I created, he thought. Yong-jun walked towards them and coughed to get their attention. "Oh, it's Mr. Bloodwolf." Just hearing that nickname made our main character's expression darken. What the heck is a Bloodwolf? Yong-jun screamed internally, because a title isn't just some simple nickname. When a player achieves a certain number of accomplishments, the system recognizes it as part of their legend. That is a true title, as such a title directly affects a player's playstyle. Some people even try to engineer their own legends for a title, but most of them fail. Among them, many ended up with shameful titles they wanted to hide. Let's see. Bloodwolf. Thinking it over, Yong-jun suddenly felt that the title wasn't so bad. He stroked his chin, thinking. Seeing him approach, the twins brightened up and asked, "What brings you over here? Do you want to hang out with us?" Hearing the question, Yong-jun snapped out of his tangled thoughts about his title and said a little awkwardly, "Thanks for what you did earlier." Across from him, the siblings were surprised to hear Yong-jun say something like that. They were stunned for a few seconds, but right after that, they exchanged a mischievous glance. "Oh, come on, it was nothing. We're all in this together anyway. Don't worry about it. Just consider it payback for helping us chop wood, okay?" Back to Yong-jun. Perhaps not wanting to feel indebted, he forced himself to ask, "So is there anything I can help with? Anything at all? Is it really okay if we ask, let's go over there?" The older sister Hanaji spoke up, having just remembered something. Next, the two of them led Yong-jun to a clearing where countless sacks looking like sleeping bags stitched together from monster hides were laid out. However, after looking at them, Yong-jun had a different thought. Wait a minute. Are these for putting bodies inside? Behind him, the older sister heard this and had the sudden urge to punch Yong-jun a few times. "Bodies? What bodies?" "They're sleeping bags made from monster hides." "Oh, so that's what this is. Is this where the other camp members sleep? Because I kept my distance. I didn't realize that getting too close might hinder my goal," Yong-jun thought to himself. Then he turned and asked, "But why are you showing me this?" Handon spoke up to explain, "This isn't everything. We also need to bring emergency rations equipment and a lot more. I think we could make a cart, but there's no way we could push it ourselves. We would all have to push it together." "She's really given this a lot of thought, huh?" Yong-jun thought, then said, "So why don't you two just make the cart?" "What, but how are we supposed to push it?" Handon asked. Yong-jun replied confidently, "There's a way." After speaking, he began to think about transportation. He only had two options. The first was to tame a monster, but the problem was that there were no living monsters around. That means the second option was the only one left. Having come to this conclusion, Yong-jun began to open the treasury of greed using a skill called Skeleton Arise. It was a necromancer's art from the Black Tower that infused mana into bones and brought the dead back to life. "Arise," Yong-jun muttered the word, and then the skeletons in front of him began to rise and move as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Of course, this sight drew everyone's attention. "What in the world is that?" they exclaimed in shock. Meanwhile, a skeletal boar walked up to Yong-jun and bowed its head in submission. "Don't worry, it's safe." He turned and said to the others, but his reassurance did little to ease their concerns. "Is it really okay?" someone asked nervously. In the end, their leader, Yuso, stepped forward to test it. "Can I touch it?" After she spoke, she calmly approached the skeletal boar and gently placed her hand on its skull. Of course, since it was under Jong-sun's control, it didn't make any sudden moves. "Whoa, it's like a pet. Really, can I touch it too?" they said curiously, crowding around the monster and eagerly touching it all over. "Of course, go ahead," Jong-sun thought to himself. The skeleton only obeys its master's orders. Its docile movements are all because of my instructions. The mood has lightened up a bit. Excellent. Time passed quickly, and the initial shock of Jong-sun summoning the skeletal boar faded away. While resting, Jong-sun himself was a little surprised. This sleeping bag is made much better than I expected. At the same time, the constellation, the eccentric prince, rubbed its bloated stomach and sighed in satisfaction, remarking, "What a magnificent meal that was." Seeing this, Jong-sun reminded it, "Now that you're full, please take a break for a while." After speaking, he began to think about what was next. Chapter 2 of the tutorial trial. As he thought about it, some unpleasant memories from his past began to surface, souring his mood. The past is just the past. I have to focus on what's in front of me now. If I miss this chance, I'll never be able to go back. With that thought, he began to turn over, trying to calm himself down and get some sleep, when suddenly, a black feather landed gently on Jong-sun, catching his attention. The crow constellation lowers its beak and points. The crow constellation points at your sword, urging you with greed. The crow constellation eloquently declares that you should offer it the sword. And why would I do that? Yong asked, despite having taken countless treasures from the crow's own treasury. In response to Jong-sun's attitude, the crow naturally began to make threats. The crow constellation warns that if you refuse, it will revoke your right to use its treasury. Hearing this, Jong-sun simply sneered in contempt and challenged it right back. "Go on, just try it." As he said this, he already had it all figured out. "When I used Mammon's power, I realized something. I thought he let me use it out of sheer curiosity, but I was mistaken. The power I'm using is separate from your actual treasury. Isn't that right?" Jong-sun said with a smile, thinking to himself, "It's not that you won't stop me from using the treasury, it's that you can't. The power I possess came from Mammon's tomb before my regression. When he retreated, the tomb's physical form disappeared and his intrinsic power became mine. So Mammon's current threats are empty." In response to Jong-sun's words, Mammon began to radiate a dangerous aura. The crow constellation spreads its wings menacingly in response to your arrogance. Seeing it react this way, Jong-sun knew he had to tone down his attitude. Still, provoking a being like this is pretty dangerous. After that thought, he softened his tone and explained, "I never said I wouldn't give it to you. However, Durandal is the most powerful weapon I currently possess. Therefore, I'll work with the Demon King to create a copy of Durandal. After all, Mammon has the ability to replicate items. Most of the treasures in your treasury are just copies anyway," Jong-sun thought to himself. The crow nodded, agreeing to his proposal. The crow constellation nods, thinking that adding another copy to its collection wouldn't be so bad. In return, Jong-sun stated his price. "In exchange, please allow me to use the real treasury." Hearing this, Mammon began to ponder. It seemed he was a little annoyed by Jong-sun's words. "With my current abilities, I can only borrow the treasury's power. I can't use the true artifacts," Jong-sun thought to himself, as the black crow began staring at him with a threatening gaze. The ravenous crow constellation looked around annoyed, as if it were at a disadvantage. Jong-sun had to quickly speak up and explain, "I don't want an unfair trade. The things I need are the low-grade artifacts at the entrance to the vault." Upon hearing these words, the black crow calmed down a bit. He recalled the artifacts and thought, "In my past life, I entered Mammon's treasury, so I vaguely remember the layout. Mammon keeps all the rare items in the deepest part, which means only low-grade artifacts are near the entrance. If the condition is to receive the legendary weapon Durandal, then for Mammon, this isn't a bad deal at all." Jong-sun made his assessment, and just as he thought after a moment of contemplation, Mammon nodded, accepting the offer. Seeing this, Jong-sun smiled and said, "Then the pact is made." As he spoke, he casually grabbed the sword and cut his right palm to begin sealing the deal. Blood flows from the feathers of the ravenous crow. The pact with the ravenous crow is complete. Through this pact, you have gained access to a part of Mammon's treasury. Just as the notification ended, the blood from Jong-sun's hand covered the entire sword, which was then transferred over to Mammon. "Not bad," Jong-jeon thought to himself. "I'll find what I need soon enough." With that, he began to open the true treasury of greed. The scene shifts to the inside of the treasury. It's unclear whether his consciousness was transported inside or his entire body. But just as he predicted, the outer area mostly contained various crafting materials and some potions. This didn't come as a huge surprise to our protagonist. As expected, finding actual equipment was proving to be difficult. Most of the items near the entrance are consumables, he thought. Then a particular potion caught his eye. "Oh, what's this?" Yongjian mumbled, picking up the potion bottle to examine it. It was an elven forest dew potion. Description: dew gathered from the leaves of the world tree, carrying the world tree's energy. Seeing this, our hero didn't hesitate for a second, immediately tipping the bottle back and chugging it down. After finishing it, he let out a contented sigh. This will be useful. In the background, Mammon saw Yongjian acting so freely and angrily questioned him. "The constellation Ravenous Crow has opened the treasury as per our pact, but be warned, if you use the artifacts without permission, he will not spare you." I know, Yongjian grumbled, then thought to himself, even though he agreed to the trade for Durand, he still seems pretty worried. "I'll only use these when absolutely necessary." "Don't worry," Yongjian said reassuringly. Time flew by, and soon it was the next morning. Everyone had started piling the things they needed onto ox carts they had seemingly conjured out of nowhere. "Let's get this carried over." "How is everyone so fast? My cart is super sturdy, just bring it here," Hyun said with a laugh. Seeing this, her older sister ran over to argue. "Mine is sturdier." All right, they're both very sturdy. You two don't need to fight over it." Yusola stepped in to mediate. Just then, Jongbyon, who had been who knows where, finally ran up. "Can I help with anything?" As he spoke, he noticed some guy eyeing his cart. "What the... I don't remember this guy at all. Does that mean he died before the point I regressed in my past life?" Jonggeon frowned, thinking. The man with the glasses noticed Jongjeon right behind him and said with a start, "Oh, sorry about that. I was just lost in thought." "Is something wrong?" Jongjeon asked. The man adjusted his glasses and replied, "No, it's fascinating. Even in a world of magic, how can a skeleton stand upright without ligaments, tendons, or muscles? Could it be that the network of black smoke between the joints is what connects the bones?" Hearing him say that, a look of surprise flashed in Jongjeon's eyes. "Black smoke, can he see mana?" He seems to be very knowledgeable about these things. Maybe he has an aptitude for dark magic, Jongjeon thought. Meanwhile, the bespectacled man realized he might have gotten a little too excited and quickly turned to explain. "Oh, my apologies, it's an occupational hazard." "An occupational hazard? Are you a doctor?" Jongjeon asked. "Not exactly. I'm a graduate student majoring in anatomical research." He added, "Oh, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Baekhyun." "Haha, it's a shame it's not very relevant to this world. It's not much help for healing or restoring stamina," he said, scratching his head. However, with his past life experience, Jongyeon had a completely different take. "I wonder what it'll be like when this guy learns how to use mana and applies his knowledge of anatomy. He might even surpass Yusola and Hancho." Thinking that Jongjeon gave a slight smile and asked Baekhyun to sit down for a moment. "Ah, yes, but I need to help everyone else," Baekhyun quickly replied. "It'll just be a moment," Jongjeon insisted. He took out the dagger at his hip, used it to draw a circle on the ground, and told Baekhyun to sit inside it. An intricate magic circle immediately appeared at his feet. Next, he opened the Treasury of Greed and took out an item called a Dark Magic Stone. It was a dark stone that acted as a catalyst for the magic of sorcerers from the Black Tower. Finally, Jonggeon threw the stone right into the magic circle, causing it to erupt with streams of purple magical energy. Turning back to Baekhyun, who also saw this surge of energy, he asked, "Is this that same smoke from the skeleton?" Without answering the question, Jongjeon just calmly walked behind him, placed his hands firmly on the young man's shoulders and warned, "This will hurt a little, so try to grit your teeth and bear it." "Ah, okay," Baekhyun replied. Jongjeon closed his eyes and began to awaken the sorcery powers of the Black Tower within him. This wasn't just about teaching someone how to use a magic circle, but how to activate one on someone else entirely. Just then, Jongjeon began to use his special method to channel magical energy into Baekhyun's body, causing him so much pain that the whites of his eyes rolled back. "From now on, you'd better keep your mouth shut, otherwise your heart will explode." Jonggeon warned urgently, and Baekhyun understood quickly, clenching his jaw shut just as he was told. Jongsun calmly used his method, and in the process he could see Baekhyun's potential. That quick reaction was proof he definitely had talent. As for Baekhyun, streams of magical energy were now converging in his heart to form a circle. It felt like his heart was being squeezed. Anyone with a weak will would have passed out right then, he thought to himself. And just like that, the circle in your heart has been formed. "You did well," Jongsun praised. "Better than I expected." You absorbed the mana from that high-grade dark magic stone so quickly. You've worked hard. Jongsun nodded and began to control the boar skeleton, moving it in front of Baekhyun so the four-eyed young man could test his power. Understanding Jongsun's intention, Baekhyun reached out his hand, channeling dark magic into the skeleton and altering its entire structure. He was reconstructing the skeleton anatomically, connecting the joints with mana, and creating muscles. This method is slower than mine, but it's much more solid and sturdy. Maybe that's why the Black Tower sorcerers study corpses, Jongsun thought to himself. As for Baekhyun, after a few more tweaks, he had completed the adjustments. "Stand up," he commanded, and the boar now, aside from looking a little smaller, seemed no different at all. However, just being able to do this was enough to make the four-eyed young man flush with excitement. At the same time, a certain constellation also took an interest in him. The constellation of the Corpse of Destruction is looking at player Baekhyun with great interest. The fourth-rank Demon King, Kamigan, the great Marquis of Hell, master of necromancy and spirit magic, the camp's first sorcerer. No, it would be more correct to say the birth of its first necromancer. If Kamigan is here, I don't need to help anymore. I'm glad there will be someone to make skeletons if I leave the camp, Jongsun thought, while the four-eyed young man over here, after his excitement died down, awkwardly turned to say thank you. Actually, I was worried I wouldn't be able to help the camp at all. Across from him, seeing his expression, Jongsun offered a few words of encouragement. Be more confident. If you've attracted Kamigan's attention, your potential is top tier. Hearing these words, Baekhyun's eyes brightened a little, and he turned to stroke the skeleton beside him. Here I found a talent that I could never have on Earth. I will work hard to train this power. Hearing this, Jongsun's gaze grew a bit pensive. Then he said, "In that case, I'll give you a mission." After speaking, he took out something from the treasury of greed, a winged lion's corpse. This is the corpse of a manticore, a truly bizarre-looking monster. It has a lion's mane, the tusks of a wild boar, the horns of a bull, the wings of a bat, and the tail of a scorpion. Seeing the strange monster's body, which had suddenly appeared before him, the four-eyed young man couldn't help but jump back in surprise. Whoa, what is that thing? Time passed quickly. At this moment, everyone had finished packing their things and began to move. Chapter 2. Movement Guide. Move across the plains and reach the destination. Time remaining to reach the destination is 151 hours and 41 minutes. Right now, Jongsun was sitting comfortably on a cargo cart pulled by a skeleton like a total boss, while the group's leader, Joe, didn't forget to remind everyone, "We don't know when the monsters will appear, so everyone take turns watching all directions." "Yes, sir," they shouted in unison. As for the older sister, Han Ari, one of the twins took this chance to gloat to her younger sister. "See, my carriage is faster, isn't it?" "What are you talking about? There's no difference at all," Ha-un retorted, annoyed. Up above, Jongsun overheard their conversation and nodded to himself. Both carriages were good and both twins were developing well. Meanwhile, Baekhyun was learning necromancy under the guidance of Kamigan, the constellation of the horse that tramples death, who was amazed by his contractor's vast knowledge and was teaching him the basics of dark magic. I hope everything continues to go as smoothly as this. There's going to be a monster ambush on these plains. The problem is, I can't remember exactly where it's going to appear at this time. Jongsun frowned in thought. To ensure the trip's safety, he summoned his underling. Park Jongpyo. Yes, boss. Park Jongpyo, reporting for duty. Go scout the surrounding area, Jongsun instructed. But this made the blonde young man a bit confused. Scout where? Up ahead, Jongsun said calmly. But aren't we already keeping watch up front? He asked, puzzled. Jongsun specified further, not right around here. I mean a few kilometers ahead. Hearing this request, Park Jongpyo nearly fell over backward. What, boss? Even if my legs are fast, there's no way I can do that. A few kilometers, that would take me a whole hour to run. That's true. It's too far to go on just 2 feet. Jongsun narrowed his eyes, thinking. He then reached into the sacks on his back, pulled out some bones, and used dark magic to summon a skeletal steed. Whoa, what's this? Is that for me? Park Jongpyo asked cheerfully. Yeah, it depends on how you use it, Jongsun replied. Thanks, boss. I'll name it Beck Gang in your honor. All right, boss, I'm off. Let's go, Beck Gang. With that, he hopped on and took off on his new ride, speeding straight ahead. His reckless posture made Jongsun, who was watching from behind, question his very existence. How could a guy like that even awaken as a hunter? Back to Park Jongpyo. As he rode the skeletal beast, he started reminiscing about the past. Man, this reminds me of the good old days before I got here cruising around the city in my imported car. This feels just like that. Following the boss was the best decision I ever made. As he thought this, a grin spread across his face, proud of his choice to ride his boss's coattails. This sight made the constellation, the donkey-headed thief, struggle to suppress its laughter. Hey, stop bringing up embarrassing stuff. You're making fun of me, aren't you? Park Jong-pyo shouted in frustration just as something zipped past his face, startling him. Before he could even react, he realized a shower of throwing darts was flying right at him. Seeing this, despite a flicker of fear, he quickly used his wolf fur cloak to shield himself and yelled, "What the hell? Who are these guys?" Just then, Park Jong-pyo's eyes fell upon the source of the darts, a horde of bright green goblins, and there were a ton of them. Left with no other choice, as if by instinct, Park Jong-pyo started wailing as he hit the gas and immediately spun around. Player Park Jong-pyo has used Sprint. The constellation, the donkey-headed thief, burst into loud laughter. It clutched its stomach, rolling on the ground with glee. Behind him, the goblins saw Park Jong-pyo flee and let out a few threatening cries before immediately giving chase. If I can just get back to the boss, he'll take care of these guys, Park Jong-pyo thought, gritting his teeth. Soon enough, he saw the group up ahead. I see him, boss. At that moment, from his perspective, it looked like Jong-sun was muttering something. What's he saying? Get down! Just as that thought crossed his mind, a giant fireball appeared in Jong-sun's hands, making Park Jong-pyo's eyes go wide. Duck my head. Is that really what he meant? Ignoring his subordinate's terror, Jong-sun aimed the fireball perfectly at the center of the goblin horde, blowing them to bits. Nothing's more satisfying than total annihilation. An entire horde of monsters. Jong-sun said, dusting off his hands, but it wasn't over yet. Noticing something, the leader Jua hurriedly shouted a command. Everyone take cover behind the carriages. An attack is coming. Hearing her command, everyone glanced up and saw a rain of throwing darts heading their way. The twin sisters had already scrambled for cover. Seeing this, Jong-sun called out, Jua Hancho with me. After saying that, he opened the greedy treasury to learn a skill called Wide Area Shield. A shield magically adjusted to defend against wide area attacks from the colorless magic tower. After learning it, he waved his hand, creating layers of barriers that enveloped the three of them, deflecting all the incoming darts. According to the principles of the Black Tower, the power of chain lightning has been enhanced. Player Kang Honyul uses Battle Cry. Player Jua uses Tarantula's First Leg. And just like that, the three of them unleashed their ultimate skills and broke through the goblin formation in a single assault, leaving everyone in the back completely stunned. Whoa, this is no time to be amazed. Hurry up and help them. We can't just leave all the work to them. The group exchanged glances, and then they all gripped their weapons, ready to give those goblins a beatdown. Meanwhile, the four-eyed guy Baek Hyun also commanded his wild boar skeleton to charge forward. It rammed into the mob of goblins, sending them flying. Baek Hyun, if it's this intense already, I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens when the manticore shows up. Time passed quickly, and faced with the group's overwhelming attack, the goblins scattered like headless chickens. They had succeeded. They had successfully thwarted the goblin ambush. Afterwards, the leader, Dukele, gathered everyone for a quick discussion. Great job, everyone. Let's quickly chase down the remnants. That would be too dangerous. Let's regroup first. The fact that they ran means they have a den nearby. So it's another unknown variable, isn't it? Jong-sun thought for a moment, then turned to Dukele and said, Once everyone's gathered, just go on without me. Where are you planning to go? She asked, puzzled. Jong-sun stated his purpose simply, I'm going after the goblins. As he said this, he noticed Park Jong-pyo struggling off to the side and tossed him a recovery potion. Park Jong-pyo, you've had it rough. Boss, you're the only one I can count on, Park Jong-poo said cheerfully. At the very least, take this low-grade potion and get some rest. With that thought, Jong-sun used his skills to silently tail the greenskins back to their base. So the goblins' lair is deep in the forest, huh? Based on the group that just attacked, there are probably at least 1,000 goblins, maybe even double that. How am I supposed to attack this place? Should I just burn the whole forest down? Jong-un quietly hatched a plan. Time flew by. The scene shifts to the green skin encampment, where a goblin gatekeeper was in the middle of a massive yawn. Yawning as he patrolled, he was suddenly shocked to find another goblin groaning in a pool of its own blood. However, before he could even turn to warn the others, Jong-un appeared behind him like a ghost. Don't worry, you'll be joining them soon enough. The moment the words left his lips, he plunged his sword through the monster's heart, finishing it off. The technique that allowed him to approach so silently was none other than Hukira's stealth. It was the same stealth art once used by the legendary assassin Hukira, who spread fear among the continent's nobility. At that moment, countless terrifying screams echoed through the area, forcing Jong-un to quickly duck behind a tree for cover. Just then, a horde of goblins zipped past right in front of him. He didn't know where they were running off to, but Yongun couldn't help but celebrate internally. All right, time to make my move. Seizing the opportunity while the greenskins were gone, he moved deeper inside and discovered the hidden dungeon, Cunning Goblin Village. You have achieved an outstanding accomplishment. You have received 2,000 bonus points. Casually touching the structure in front of him, Yongun thought to himself, the goblins definitely built this place to last. The most luxurious room is probably the chieftain's. There's also a warehouse in the back. They must be in a total panic. All the surrounding goblins are dead. Spare me! A terrified voice suddenly rang out, catching Yongun's attention. He turned to look and discovered several people being held inside a large wooden cage. They probably started the tutorial trial around here. I feel bad for them, but saving them now would be suicide. One wrong move and we'll all die. Yongun shook his head at the thought and quickly left to scout other areas. Then after arriving at the warehouse area, our hero stealthily used his skill to instantly finish off the goblin guard, then used the power of gluttony to dispose of its corpse. You have eaten a goblin warrior. His patron Constellation mumbled that both the taste and the quantity were still lacking. Just wait a little longer. Now, to erase the traces. Perfect, Yongun replied, carefully entering the warehouse. He immediately discovered it contained countless types of weapons. From spears and armor to shields, it had everything. Whoa, there's quite a stash of weaponry here, Yongun said with a smile. While the starving demon in his head was extremely disappointed at not finding any food, Yongun ignored its complaints. Yongun quickly opened his greedy treasure and took out a spatial bag. It was a special bag created at the colorless magic tower, capable of holding the contents of an entire small warehouse. And just like that, Yongun quickly tossed every single weapon into his spatial bag. It's not easy to get weapons of this caliber during the tutorial trial. It's almost like a low-grade version of Mammon's treasury. It's even bigger than I thought, Yongun mused. However, this thought was overheard by his constellation Mammon, who became slightly annoyed. The king, who wears a filthy overcoat, frowns, feeling insulted by the comparison to this tiny treasury. All right. A super low-grade version. Happy now, Yongun said with a sigh, placating the entity. Then he scanned his surroundings one more time. He then found a wooden chest filled with countless 7-colored orbs. What are these? Are they mana stones? Perfect. I've just figured out a way to deal with that goblin horde. Yongun smiled to himself as he looked at the stone in his hand. Meanwhile, in the goblin chief's chamber, he slammed his spiked club hard on the floor to threaten the 2 underlings before him. You still haven't found the intruder. This was the goblin chief Cat. You useless animals. As he spoke, he casually swung his club right into the face of the green skin in front of him and turned to order the rest. Get out. Go find him for me right now. I'm getting hungry. Bring me the youngest one you can find. Hearing this, the goblins scurried outside as if they'd received a pardon, eager to escape before this Cat fellow could get any angrier. Those idiots, their levels are truly unacceptable, Cat grumbled. From right behind him, Yongun nodded in agreement. It's true, isn't it? Just like I said. Startled by the voice replying to him, the goblin chief quickly spun around. But the moment it turned, Jongson slashed his dagger across its neck, sending blood spurting. Who are you? The Cat demanded in a panic, but Jongson had no intention of wasting his breath on the creature. Knowing the goblin warriors could return any second, Jongson cut him off. I don't have time to explain. The Cat pressed again. Meanwhile, Jongson was slightly surprised that the monster was still alive after having its throat slit. So, you're a named monster, huh? Your reflexes are pretty sharp, Jongson remarked, but the goblin chief was already scared out of his wits. This human is too dangerous, he thought. He didn't even hesitate to slit my throat. The more he thought, the more he sweated bullets. He had no other choice but to call for help from his kin. Guards, damn it. Get in here, he yelled, facing the entrance. But Jongson just shook his head. It's useless. It's too late. As he spoke, he snapped his fingers. Immediately, the entire goblin encampment erupted in countless earth-shattering explosions. Hearing the sound, the Cat chief scrambled to the window only to stare in stunned horror at the sea of flames engulfing his village. My village, he stammered. The explosions were caused by mana stones, ores that contain magical energy. While they have many uses, one of the most potent is to enchant them with explosion magic, effectively turning them into bombs that detonate all the mana sealed within. Even the weakest mana stone can blow up a house, Jongson explained with a smile, and I placed them all around the village. This revelation sent the chief into a blind rage, making him completely forget the difference in strength between them. How dare you, he roared, gripping his club and lunging straight at Jongson, ready for a fight to the death. Seeing this, Jongson simply took a light step to the side, effortlessly dodging the attack. He then plunged his dagger straight into the chief's neck, easily sending the monster to meet its maker. You have defeated the named monster, Cunning, Goblin Hogan Cat. Personal contribution points have increased by 8,000. Because you defeated a named monster alone, your personal contribution points will increase by an additional 4,000. You have obtained Hogan Cat's Spiked Club. Jongson was a bit surprised. It only took him 2 moves to finish off the chief. He's more fragile than I thought, he mused. According to the rules, I was supposed to fight my way through thousands of goblins, starting from the dungeon's main gate. So maybe named monsters are a bit on the weak side, he thought, just as more system notifications popped up. You have completely conquered the hidden dungeon Cunning Goblin's Lair. A remarkable achievement has been attained. As a reward, your personal contribution points have increased by 20,000. The constellation, the Starving Prince, is looking at you with sparkling eyes. Seeing that the hungry demon was starting to drool again, Jongson knew it was time for a meal. Yes, I apologize for making you wait. As he spoke, he activated his gluttony authority. You have devoured the Cunning Goblin Hogan Cat. Absorbed nutrients, increasing agility by 5 points, and intelligence by 10 points. A small amount of energy and mana has been absorbed into your Dantian and heart. Jongson himself was a bit surprised by the notification. With gluttony's absorption, I can absorb mana too. The constellation, the Starving Prince, eyes a large cooked dish, yet still craves more. A large cooked dish. Jongson wondered to himself, does he mean this entire village? There are over 1,000 of them. If I use gluttony's power on every single one, this will take forever. On the other side, perhaps even Belelphegor felt his host had a point. So to make mealtime more convenient, the constellation granted him more power. The constellation, the Starving Prince, increases the power of gluttony by 1 level. The power of gluttony now allows you to consume multiple corpses at once. Consuming a certain number of corpses simultaneously will trigger an additional nutrient absorption effect. This was a game-changer additional nutrient absorption. This timing is perfect, Jongson thought, and immediately activated his new power. Alright, now that it's been enhanced, you can feast to your heart's content. With the power of gluttony, you have devoured the entire Cunning Goblin village. As the system announced it, the teeth of gluttony descended upon the village. Suddenly, a giant mouth materialized in the sky above the village and chomped straight down, making even Jongson's eyes widen in shock. I forgot. I usually treat him like a starving child throwing a tantrum, but a demon is still a demon. You have eaten 2,101 goblins in the area. Absorbing a large amount of nutrients will increase all stats by 11. A large amount of energy and mana is being absorbed. You have successfully created the 3rd mana circle. This was achieved through the Black Tower's training method. With the creation of a new circle, you can now use 3rd level magic. The skill proficiency of the Black Tower's training method has increased. Your magical power. Hearing the announcement, Jongin couldn't hide the joy on his face. The 2nd chapter of the tutorial, and you're already at the 3rd circle. You have set a new record for the tower. An unbelievably impressive achievement. As a reward, you receive 100,000 points. Many magic-related constellations are now interested in you. The constellation, the Cursing Crow Fentor, severs the connection from lower-level constellations. The constellation, the 5th day, looks at you with a beautiful smile. At that moment, an incredibly beautiful goddess appeared before Jongin, leaving him completely captivated. She was the 5th day, the goddess of love and beauty. Freya, I've caught the attention of a highest-level constellation. Normally, a constellation of this level only appears at the very end of the tutorial chapters and only for a handful of highly skilled players. But I already have 2 demons by my side. I really hope I don't offend the goddess Freya. At the same time, Mammon also shot Freya an irritated look, but she didn't seem to care in the slightest. The constellation, the Cursing Crow, warns that it will not tolerate anyone interested in its position. The constellation, the 5th day, with a mysterious smile, ignores the interference from the other constellations. The feathers of the Cursing Crow tremble with anger. Back with Jongin, he felt a sense of relief, seeing that they didn't immediately start fighting. It seems she doesn't mind, although the other one seems pretty annoyed. Well, it probably won't be a problem. To prevent the upcoming Great Demon God War, I need to get on the gods' good side. Time passed quickly. The group of people held captive by the goblins had already been rescued by Jongin. You're here. How did you manage this? Thank you so much. I thought I was going to die. I'll never forget this, the group said, crying with relief. Meanwhile, Jongin faced a bit of a dilemma. Should I take them with me? Even though I only saved them by chance, I don't feel responsible for them. From within the crowd, an older man seemed to notice the hesitation on Junggun's face. So he stepped forward and said, "I know what you're thinking. We have no intention of holding you back, our benefactor. Seseb Hawaswanad. We will continue on to our own destination." So this guy is the leader. He seems like a reliable leader, and I can see the confidence in their eyes. They must be survivors from the first chapter of the tutorial, Junggun thought to himself, before speaking up. "I have no plans to protect you all. However, if you decide to follow me, then you must be more determined than ever. Over here." When the leader heard what Junggun said, his face lit up with joy. "I'm truly grateful. Let's get moving. We need to walk non-stop for half a day." Junggun waved his hand and said, "Meanwhile, back with Joa's group." At that moment, Hanchul was pulling the cart in place of the skeleton. "Are you okay? If you're tired, you can take a break, or we can all pull it together," Joa suggested. However, the stubborn young man, Hanchul, insisted on doing the heavy lifting. "No need. This is part of my training, so it's fine." At the same time, the constellation old man riding a crocodile was also teaching his partner more powerful techniques. Back with Joa, she suddenly turned and asked, "Do you think Jonggun is okay?" In response to this question, Hanchul's gaze remained fixed forward. "He's not weak. He's going to get much stronger. Even stronger than that." "It's hard to imagine," she said in astonishment, before her attention was drawn by the sound of hurried footsteps as Park Jongpoo's cart approached. Park Jongpoo, why is he in such a hurry? On the other side, Park Jongpoo had just stumbled out of the cart and was retching violently. "Park Jongpoo," someone said with concern. However, Lee Hanu stepped forward to stop them. "Wait, let me take a look." After saying that, she used her healing ability on Park Jongpoo, and right after that, the color drained from her face. "It's poison?" Hearing her words, Joa was also startled. "Poison? Could it be the goblins again?" "No, I don't see any external wounds. It was likely inhaled." As she said this, a strange scent suddenly wafted into Lihanu's nose. "Wait, this smell. Everyone wet a cloth and cover your mouths. There's poison in the air," Lihanu shouted urgently. Unfortunately, the warning came a little too late because just moments later, everyone was clutching their throats and foaming at the mouth from the poison. With no other choice, Lihanu had to turn and plead for help from her patron constellation. "Sir Max," a message from her constellation, the blood-soaked lion, declared that it was time to make a decision as there were too many patients. Seeing this, Lihanu was in deep shock. "I thought I had finally become a true healer, but now I have to choose who lives. If only he were here." Lihanu thought, covering her mouth in despair. At the most critical moment, just as the group was about to be wiped out, a cool breeze suddenly washed over them, making them feel as good as new. This was Cool Breeze, one of the basic wind spells from the Blue Tower.